What is up, y'all? Welcome on back to another review. I'm continuing my review series into Alien Earth, which you can find on Hulu or Disney Plus currently. And I'm here to review episode number 3. Now, I am going to be diving full send into this episode. So if you have not seen episode 3, this is your chance to push pause and then come back once you have watched up through episode 3, because there's very little I can say about this episode without going full spoilers. So again, this is your last warning, full spoilers from this point forward. Man, oh man, this was a fantastic hour of television. This to me is the best episode out of the 3. While I liked episode 2 more than I did 1, but this one just kind of combines all the elements of 1 and 2 into a singular episode, and the pacing is pretty damn good. It starts off with the first half of this episode being more horror in its vibes, and with the tension, we had the xenomorph. We're following up on the cliffhanger from episode 2 where Joe was taken by the xenomorph and Wendy went after him. So we kind of had all that wrapped up. And then the back end of the episode is really where we start diving into some more of the lore of Alien and really fleshing out this world and also the life cycle of the xenomorph. So I think the ending of this episode was just absolutely fantastic. But let's just go ahead and jump into some of the more specific things about this episode that I really loved. First off, from the first 2 episodes, Boy Cavalier was a very interesting character to me. He was actually one of the 3 characters that I was most intrigued by with those first 2 episodes. I had asked the question on whether or not this was going to be the true villain of the series, whereas we always get the corporate leaders being the quote-unquote villains at the end of the movies, so to speak. But he was very intriguing to me, and I think this episode really starts fleshing out that character a little bit more, and we're kind of seeing a little bit of the end game already through 3 episodes with how he's portrayed in this episode. Boy Cavalier is showing the signs of, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. He's told that he is weeks away from achieving and creating a product that is going to absolutely change the world. This is the hybrid synthetics. But as soon as he sees these alien specimens on a Yutani ship and the fact that Yutani is desperate to get these specimens back, it's just like he gets tunnel visioned and that's all he can see. This has to be his inevitable downfall, right? It reminds me of like Icarus, who got too excited about flying and then got too close to the sun and ended up burning up like the higher he went. It kind of reminds me of that with Boy Cavalier. Like Kirsch even says in this episode that, was all this worth it? Because you're risking everything for something new and shiny. They're not just throwaway lines. Boy Cavalier is being portrayed as this character that he just goes to the next thing. He goes to the next shiny object and he just wants something more. It's interesting that he created these hybrid synthetics with children, and all these children are from Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, when he himself acts very much like a child. He's very immature in that way. So to me, this inevitably has to be the downfall of Boy Cavalier, is the fact that he is just tunnel visioned into these alien specimens. Now, the big thing, and I kind of asked this on one of the last reviews, speaking of Boy Cavalier, my best guess is, in terms of predicting what's going to happen with the future of this series and even the timeline in general, my best guess is the hybrids are going to be erased from the timeline, because if you look from this point forward, we have no mention of anything in regards to hybrids in the lore or the world of Alien. So to me, I think Boy Cavalier is going to die at some point in the series, whether that's this season or next season, if there is one, and the hybrids are going to eventually be erased from the timeline, which would explain why they never show up in the future. I'm just assuming that it doesn't make it past this series, and no one knows about the origins of the hybrids, which they do tease a little bit with Boy Cavalier being told that, hey, you're weeks away from creating this life-changing, world-changing product. You can't focus on this other bullshit. You need to get to focus on the prize. So I think this will be inevitable that Boy Cavalier will die at some point and the hybrid synthetics will die with him. Now, this episode is called Metamorphosis, and I think this episode does a great job of really sticking with the title of the episode because there's a lot of growth and a lot of development of different things in this episode. In particular, the hybrids, which I said on the first 2 episodes that I didn't really feel attached to any of those characters, which was why I didn't feel like I was liking the show nearly as much as everybody else. I just didn't feel attached to any of the characters or find them intriguing at any point. So I didn't really find a whole lot of interest in what they were going through. And I think this episode really developed the hybrids more so than the first 2 episodes combined. These hybrids are really acting like kids out there. It might seem a little forced at times, and it's kind of eye-rolling, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm digging it the more I watch. Like, I'll use the 2 guys slightly, and I think his name is Smooth, if I'm not mistaken. They're hugging each other, they're sort of fighting, they're calling each other bro, and they're trying to top each other. It reminds me of what it felt like when I was a kid, where you would go tell your best friend a story, and it's some big, elaborate thing, and then he has to interrupt you and say, no, 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 check this out. Guess what I did? And that is what's happening in this scene between Slightly and Smooth. And I thought it was just pitch perfect dialogue. The acting is really great. Even the scene between them and Morrow, just so damn good. He even picks up on the fact that they're acting like kids, and of course, they deny it. We also had the other hybrid, Nibs, who was the one that, the little eyeball with the tentacles, it shot up on her eye, and I'm thinking she's infected somehow. She is completely changing her character. She's very self-aware of the fact that they're hybrid synthetics at this point. So she's definitely acting a little suspect. So something's going on there with her, whether she's becoming self-aware of everything going on and she's just not liking the fact that she is going to be controlled and be this hybrid synthetic, or the fact that maybe she did get infected somehow with that little specimen. She keep touching her eye for some reason. So I don't know. Maybe it's a little PTSD moment. She's not acting right, but that just goes back to my point of this show in episode 3 is really developing these hybrids in a way that I felt was very interesting, and it kept my attention the entire time. Now, I want to briefly talk about Morrow before I jump into one of the highlights, not the highlight of the episode, but one of the moments and scenes in this episode that I really, really enjoyed. But Morrow here, I think, is like the more I see of him and I watch of this character, he's turning out to be a very good villain. I think if you watch those first 2 episodes, I don't want to say lackluster. It's fine by all means. It's not bad, but when you watch 1, 2, and 3 back to back to back, and you have Morrow finally coming on to his own, he is turning out to be just a really good villain for the rest of this series. The performance is really great. Everything about him is just so ominous in the way that he delivers his lines. And now he's trying to infiltrate the hybrids by becoming friends with Slightly. He's just so devious and knows he can trick these hybrids because they're kids. And you just can't trust a villain that is always fucking sweating, okay? This dude is pouring sweat 24/7. You can't trust him. But I really liked Morrow in this episode. I thought this was the best episode with him in it. And even his interaction with Kirsch was so fucking good, which I'll kind of segue into my discussion about Kirsch. He was one of the 3 characters that I was most intrigued and liked in those first 2 episodes. And kind of further explaining that scene between Morrow and the 2 kids, Timothy Oliphant just swag walking into the room with Morrow and the hybrids. And I'm telling you, Timothy Oliphant just commands the scene. I love the whole bit with you kick the ball over the fence and I'm the neighbor, and now it's my ball. I love that whole little bit between him and Moro. It seemed like you didn't know which way that scene was going to go, if Kirsch was just going to wreck his shit, or if Moro was just going to start, praying and spraying with his gun. I just really dig Kirsch's character here, where he's like that sarcastic, matter-of-fact personality with him. But do we really think he's one of the good ones? I mean, honestly, search your feelings here. Is he really one of the good ones? I've watched enough Alien movies to know for a fact that a main character synthetic, has ulterior motives somewhere along the line. So, gotta keep an eye out for him. The dude just doesn't swag walk into a room like that unless he has ulterior motives. Now, I did see a fan theory out there that Kirsch is actually a hybrid himself, and he's this fatherly figure to all of these kids. And the fan theory is that Kirsch is actually Wendy's father as a hybrid, which I would find interesting. I don't think he's so attached to Wendy and Joe enough to be their father. So I don't think that's entirely true. Whether he's a hybrid or not, I don't think they would put enough emphasis on the fact that Wendy was the first, she's the favorite, if Kirsch was already a hybrid at that point. So I don't think that fan theory works for the series right now. I think he is just the true-born synthetic for this Alien series. Now, the other really great sequence in this episode was Wendy, Joe, and the Xenomorph. Lots of tension here. I dig the added horror vibes. This one seems to be toying with them in a way, with like more so than anything, and it feels a little like Alien Isolation, but it's kind of off-putting as well, because every time the Xenomorph comes near them, it like stops and then it goes away. So there's something to do with, I'm going to lean towards Wendy, but both of them are a part of this conversation. You can't rule either one of them out. Something is going on between the Xenomorph and Wendy. Like I said, Joe can be involved in this because that's her brother, but something is going on because the Xenomorph, every time he comes up to one of these characters, he kind of just starts slowly backing off. And if you look and go to some of the other scenes with other humans, the Xenomorph wastes no time killing folks. So there's something going on there. I don't know what it is, but it's not right. And then how about that scene with Wendy and the Xenomorph? They're fighting, and they go into the little garage storage area, whatever you want to call it. I dig that whole sequence. Like, again, there's so much tension there. You don't know what's going to happen. And I love the fact that he opens that little door and Wendy just collapses like a sack of potatoes. I don't know what a synthetic would look like if it collapsed in real life, but I would imagine that it would look just like that, because it looked legit. Like, she just lost all feeling in her limbs and just collapsed. Just great acting there. Now, last week I talked about the score and that metal track at the very end of episode 2. There is a score addition here when it's transitioning from the ship back to Neverland. It is very guitar heavy, and it just sounds so odd to me. I still can't get over this new style with the score. Like, we got Tool, we got this guitar score here, and then at the very end of the episode, we get Metallica. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying they should cut that shit out and not do that for the rest of the series. It's completely different than what we've gotten in the past. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with my opinions from the last review, but it feels dirty to me. The best part of the episode was the very end. The score here is elevating everything in a way that just puts you closer and closer to the edge of your seat in like the best way possible. Wendy definitely has this psychic link between like the face huggers and the Xenomorphs. And then we have the sequence where they drop a little tadpole embryo from the face hugger into that rejuvenation tube of some sort. And the tadpole goes into the lung and plants itself in the lung. So curious how that is going to affect the rest of the show, because that is shit we have never seen before. in this series. We have never seen the tadpole embryo from the facehugger. I mean, honestly, I don't think I've ever really thought about it. I never really thought about what happens from the facehugger until it gets a chest burster. I've never really given it a second thought. But now that they extract this little tadpole embryo, it's kind of like, shit, well, that fucking makes sense. Like, I can't believe we haven't really further explored that in the past. But it just adds further depth to the whole xenomorph life cycle in this really dope sequence. It explains it a little bit better, which this show is doing a good job of doing. Between explaining the step in between the facehugger and the chest burster stage of the xenomorph to the blue light, the fog, it just goes to show you how little we have gotten of the lore about the xenomorphs up until now, like how they're formed, how they interact with their environment, how they hunt, all that stuff. It seems like this show is taking its time to really explore those concepts. And I get it. Some people are going to be turned off by this that says, the more mysterious it is, the scarier it is. And I'm not opposed to them diving deeper into the mythos of these xenomorphs and fleshing out that lore a little bit more. I'm not gonna lie, I feel better about this show. I feel better about these characters and the overall story. I feel better about where it's going after watching episode 3 than I did the first 2 episodes. And that's just because they did a great job of finally developing some of these characters that we're going to spend a lot more time with over the course of this first season. But a couple of questions that I have just to ponder upon in these upcoming episodes that we have coming out. Does this episode retcon Prometheus and Covenant? Morrow, now just bear with me now. Morrow was in space for 65 years. Alien Earth takes place in 2120, while Prometheus takes place 27 years prior in 2093. So Morrow was in space in 2055, which is almost 40 years before Prometheus, which Weyland-Yutani wasn't a merged corporation at the time of Prometheus. It was just Weyland Corp. So is the timeline changing? I don't think so. So I'm not opposed to them changing up the timeline a little bit, but it does muddy the waters a little bit. And another thing that this episode further muddies, and the Alien franchise has never really explicitly stated that Weyland-Yutani knew or didn't know about the eggs prior to the Nostromo finding them. We never really get that tidbit of information. It's just, oh, hey, there's a distress beacon. Let's go find out what it is. Ripley and the crew 100% did not know when they landed. And like I said, the series never makes note of whether or not Weyland-Yutani knew about the eggs prior to them landing on that planet. So it does muddy the alien timeline, or at least it makes us question what we really knew about the timeline. So yeah, overall, great episode. It makes me ask questions to myself moving forward, which I love those shows. It makes me love the show even more. It's a great show for that water cooler talk, and we don't get too many of those shows nowadays, where everybody's watching it and we're throwing out our fan theories about what is going to happen in future episodes. Look, I'm on board. Episode 3 was absolutely fucking fantastic. Cannot wait for episode 4, which I'm a little behind on catching up on them. So episode 4 comes out tomorrow, which is when I'm recording this on Monday. But yeah. Guys, let me know down in the comments below some of your theories for the future of this series. Throw some lore details in there, correct anything that I may have misspoke on. And I appreciate y'all joining me for this episode. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. And also hit that notification bell so that you know when I drop new reviews, especially on Alien Earth. But that's going to be it for me. I appreciate y'all, and I will catch y'all next time on the next one. Laters.